What's going on, Tamers? East here, and BT22 Cyber Eden is finally out, and we just wrapped up our first full week of events happening over here in Asia. You know what that means? It's time for another meta report. I've been doing some cyber sleuthing of my own to see how this set's going to shake up the game, and honestly, things look pretty good from the onset. This set introduces the new CS trait, which on its own provides tons of cards you can mix and match for a deck, while also buffing lots of decks of yesteryear, things like the Omnimon, Force Vimmon, and more. This comes off the back of a criminally short lifespan for the EX9 versus Monster set. Pour one out for my Digimon brothers out there. And with already very strongly established decks like Sakyamon, Giyamon Slop, and Royal Knights out there, I'm really interested to see how the game evolves from here. And so with that, we won't dawdle. Let's take a look at some event results, a couple of key takeaways, and a closer look at some of the decks that topped over the course of the past week. So it's pretty obvious that the kings of yesteryear are very reluctant to give up those thrones, as you see that old habits really do die hard. Decks like Sakuyamon, Giyamon Slop in all of its magical forms, and Royal Knights are still doing incredibly well in this landscape. And with the release week events and the evolution cups happening during this first week of the BT22 set release, players have had very little time to experiment with these new decks in highly competitive environments. And Japanese players are also prepping for the DC1 Grand Prix, a set of tournaments that are going to provide those precious slots to the Japan Grand Asia Open, which also are qualifiers for the World Championships later next year. And with so much on the line, honestly, I too would take Giyamon Slop over a fresh cup of whatever Kyoko's serving up over there. But that isn't to say that the BT22 cards haven't seen the light of day. On the contrary, Light Claw Nightfang, god dang it, Lightfang Nightclaw. I always do this, man. Alright, let's try again. But that isn't to say that the BT22 cards haven't seen the light of day. On the contrary, the Lightfang Nightclaw decks have been more popular than ever. And the deck has seen all manner of versions being played, with everything from the toolbox top end from last year. We've also got folks going back to the trait faithful cards thanks to the new promo Apollomon and the new Dianamon from BT22, and even folks using Leopardmon to get in on the fun. We use that word very loosely here. Leopardmon getting in on the fun, because whew, turn skipping is anything but, honestly. And to the folks out there who saw my new video on the new turn skip loop that's been discovered, there's been a couple of optimizations since that video has come out pretty quickly. I think Leopardmon Ace is now one of the front runners for optimizations for that deck, and yeah, that is terrifying. Also, sidebar to the 47 folks who posted the comment about the Leopardmon loop being discovered. Do me a favor next time and pick one comment and just upvote that one. You guys are so unoptimal. That's a misplay in my book. What are you guys doing? Although I do appreciate the engagement. Thanks. My next big takeaway from last week is definitely the popularity of Omnimon. Now for this list specifically here, I've separated out into a couple of different versions. You see things like the Nokia version, which focuses on the CS trait cards, and then there's also the older version utilizing the Matt and Tide Tamer cards. But if you put all of these results together, Omnimon was the most popular deck last week. The deck's already seen some cool variants pop up as well, with the new Garurumon loop being piloted by Uncle Jackie, one of Singapore's finest. I got a chance to hang out with him when he was here in Japan on the release day of BT22, and then he flew over to Singapore, and the next day he just won the Grand Asia Open over there. And he's got a complete write-up of his experience and the deck, so I definitely recommend giving that a read. And so with our winners from last week out of the way, I want to talk about some of the honorable mentions. Things like Diaboromon, Machinedramon, Force Vimmon, the DM trait cards, Puppets, and the Liberator Aqua cards, all which got new toys to play with in this set. One deck that I was hoping for more from was definitely the Eaters deck. Now, leading up to the set's release, I was actually really interested in this deck overall. It's nice to get a new control style deck in the game, since it's been so long since we've seen one like Mother D Reaper in the past. And honestly, that 10 Eaters cards in sources is a daunting task, a more daunting task than I first imagined, and it's made the deck kind of difficult to play. I'm hoping that better deck builders than I come up with something cool, or we even get a little bit more support from the EX10 Sinister Order set. Honestly, it would be on brand. So the first list we're going to take a look at today is going to be my favorite deck so far from this set's release, and that is the CS Alphamon deck. And this one's cool because it goes a little bit off script with some of the other Alphamon cards from the past. For folks who are unaware, the new CS trait cards, the level 3s, have the ability to cycle down, basically go down a level, and then get some really cool effects off of that, while also being able to draw cards. You get that off of things like the Palmon, who gives you additional memory. You've got the Hagurumon, who can give minus 3,000 to some Digimon on the board for a turn. And you've also got a couple copies of the Terriermon, who can let you play a Tamer for free. This, combined with the Gargomon level 4, who also lets you play a Tamer if you have one or less on the field, is really good for the deck, considering the Tamer costs are quite expensive at 5 and 4. You've also got a couple copies of the new Mirai Tamer as a way to play down a Tamer for a cheaper cost, get a little bit of card draw off of it, and then later you can bottom deck her, and then play down a more expensive Tamer for free. Going back to the level 4s here for just a moment, they also include a couple copies of the Gold Numamon, a card who is incredibly useful if you can evolve your level 3 and raising into this guy, and then the following turn you can pull level 3 out of raising, and then you can cycle down back into level 3, put the Gold Numamon at the bottom, and the next time you would evolve, you could evolve at cost -1. This already on top of the fact that the level 2 Omnimon lets you evolve at cost -1 when you do cycle down, gives you another level 4 for free. The last couple of picks I think are kind of strange, at least in my opinion, where they only include one copy of the Guardramon. I think this guy is amazing. Level 4 being able to de-digivolve something and give DP- off of the back of a Hagurumon is really strong in my opinion. This deck only includes one. It also gives you plus 2000 DP on your opponent's turn as a way to stay bigger than their biggest Digimon. But this deck opts to go with a couple copies of the Repamon instead. The Repamon can do something similar without the de-digivolve, just the DP-, and you can DP- more if you decide to trash the security, and you will probably see why this card is included when we take a look at our level 7s later. Moving up to the level 5s, the Rise Greymon just gives us more free play tamer goodness while also allowing us to have a Digimon who has Raid and the ability to get Sec +1 in Inheritance. That Sec +1 is so important, especially for the Alphamon who can swing through like 4 security in a single turn in one go. The other level 5 for the deck is the CS trait Chirinmon, the level 5 who can, when he's trashed from security, you can give something minus 8000 DP. Kind of difficult for this deck unless you're using it in tandem with the Repamon, who can give as a total 14,000, 6 from its own effect, 8 from the Chirin. And also just on Inheritance gives minus 4000 DP as well. It has another effect, but it's more useful with Mitamamon or Kentarosmon, so for this deck it's not super important. Looking at the level 6s, the star of the show is definitely the new BT22 Alphamon. This guy comes onto the board either on play, on evolve, and when attack not once per turn, and he gives something minus 5k. On top of that, he can actually evolve off of your CS trait Digimon or your Kyoko Kuremi Tamer for a cost of 5. The Kyoko can use her own effects to reduce this in some way, we'll talk about that in just a moment, but when he does suspend, if you have Kyoko or 2 Digimon at the same level, in his traits, you can unsuspend him, give himself plus 3000 DP, and you can swing again after that. Not to mention he has reboot and blocker, so you can swing, and then the following turn you can become defensive by using the reboot and then block later. Not to mention that effect to become unsuspended is all turns. That means you can actually block 2 times with this guy. This deck also has a couple of cute inclusions for some OTK potential using things like the BT20 Oryumon and Alphamon Oryuken level 7 as a way to DNA Digivolve at the end of those attacks after your Alphamon's already swung and then follow up for game. You can also use these cards defensively as a way to counter blast Digivolve on your opponent's turn and really screw with their boards and then steal the turn back to win. And if you've got the memory, you can also just use the Mega Digimon Assembly option card as a way to do it from hand when you've only got one of them on the field anyway. Look at the Tamers. We talked about the Mirai before, but you want her to actually play out your more expensive Tamers and things like the Ami card, who allows you to, when you cycle down a Digimon, you can evolve into a Digimon of the next level. So you can go cycle down to level 3, and then use Wanyamon to evolve into level 4, and then you can rest the Ami Tamer in order to go to level 5 for free. And so when you have cards like the Ami Tamer on the field and a Digimon with the Wanyamon and Gold Numamon in your sources, you can cycle down a level 4 Gold Numamon and then evolve for essentially cost -2 or free in this case into your next level 4, and then the rest of the Ami to go into level 5, all for 0. And then finally, the Kyoko Tamer here is wildly important, being your 3 memory setter every single turn. Whenever one of your level 4 or higher Digimon is deleted with the CS trait, you can rest her and then take a card from the trash and add it to hand. This is so useful for replenishing pieces if you do lose a single stack, you're missing something for the next stack to make. And she can also evolve into that Alphamon like I mentioned before, and while it is a 5 cost, which is kind of expensive, if you do have 3 or less security, you can do that at cost -2. So a 3 cost Alphamon from a Tamer seems really strong. I mentioned it when I started talking about this deck, but this is probably one of my favorite decks to play right now. And with how fast it is, how fast it can be, and the damage you can do with an Alphamon with the Oryuken Ace like holding in hand is really cool. The next deck we're going to take a look at is going to be the CS Omnimon deck. Now, where the BT17 version of Omnimon would just like play Digimon on the board that's level 3, and then you would hard slam your level 6, this deck instead tries to get 2 level 3s on the board and then evolve one to evolve the other for free. This is made easier by the fact that the level 6 Metal Garurumon and War Greymon cards both have a hand effect that says if you have the Digimon on board as level 3 and a Nokia Tamer down, you can evolve it for cost 6. And getting your level 3s down is actually pretty easy thanks to the Nokia Tamer herself, which lets you, at the start of your main phase, play down an Agumon or Gabumon from hand. You see a full set of Mirai Tamers here as well as a way to play down those Nokia Tamers for free if you find the Mirai first and then you draw the Nokia later on. And if you've played the BT17 Omnimon Ace deck before, then some of the effects from this deck are going to look a little bit similar, where things like the Inheritance effect from the Metal Garurumon and the War Greymon are pretty much the same from those, where it's if you're an Omnimon in name, then trash your opponent's security, and if you're an Omnimon in name, become unsuspended after an attack. Or during an attack, excuse me, before the actual check happens. You get the idea, yeah. There are a couple of different effects in this deck, though, when you take a look at things like the Gabumon, who is now an on-play search effect for CS trait cards and Omnimon in name, and the Agumon, who pulls back cards from the trash on play as well. The previous BT17 cards, those cards force you to evolve in Raising, then the following turn you could move to the battle area and then get the start of main phase effect. The level 6's effects are also a little bit different, where the Metal Garurumon allows you to bounce a card back to hand up the lowest level, and the War Greymon allows you to destroy a Digimon or delete a Digimon off the lowest level on your opponent's side of the board. This deck has a nice little throwback to the EX4 cards in the Gabumon and Agumon as ways to gain memory off of their evolving effects whenever one of the level 6s would evolve the other Digimon on board. And they're both actually really good choices when you take a look at the level 2 in the deck, the Tsunemon, who evolves off of Black or the CS trait Digimon. And all this culminates into your level 7 BT22 Omnimon, who on play and on attack can delete a Digimon on board, and then whenever he's Digivolved into, for every card, 2 cards of the same level in his sources, you can bottom deck a Digimon on the opponent's side of the board. So in this case, going from the level 3s into both level 6s, you can bottom deck 2 things and delete something when you attack and evolve. And to go one step beyond, he's also got Blocker and Decode, so you can actually spit out your level 3s whenever this guy is removed from the board, not by battle of course. And so with all these new BT22 cards on top of some old staples like the 2-cost Ashen, Miraculous Mega Knight to basically turn your Omnimons into a trap card, alongside some of the BT17 Metal Garurumon, Omnimon, Ace, and the War Greymon cards, this deck is something to be feared. Each week I allow my champion level and higher YouTube members to vote on decks they want to see featured in these Meta Report videos, and this week they passed the horniness check and did not vote for 3 Musketeers Beelstarmon. Thank Christ, I'm so proud of y'all. Instead, they decided to make this an all Royal Knights episode where we'll take a look at Force Vimmon. If you want to vote on decks that you'd like to see featured in these kinds of videos, as well as some other cool perks and bonuses like early access to my content, consider becoming a YouTube member today. Again, I want to give a big shout out to all the folks who do support the channel. I'm so proud of y'all for not being horny on main, and let's take a look at Force Vimmon. So, Force Vimmon was a deck that I always thought was really fun to play. Just the concept of swinging over and over and over with one Digimon to win the game was just really cool to me. And this deck feels like it shores up a lot of the problems it had back in its heyday, where, you know, anything over its 12k DP or anything bigger than 12k DP in security just meant GG's. The deck retains its same playstyle of allowing you to loop Arena Tamers in order to unsuspend or use effects to unsuspend and then keep attacking your opponent's security, but this time with a couple of insurance measures to make sure those pesky problems from the past don't creep up again. Things like the new Vmon's ability to give you Super Evade is what I'm calling it now. Basically, whenever you be removed from the board, you can just suspend the Digimon and then it just isn't removed anymore. Not only does the level 3 BT22 Vimmon have this, but also the level 4 Vidramon has this inheritance as well. That on top of some nice modernizations that a lot of decks have been getting recently, the Vidramon deck just hasn't had so far. So for example, the Vimmon giving you cost minus evolves, and then the Vidramon letting you play down Arena Tamers if you have one or less Tamer on the board. You'll see the inclusion of those 4 coveted copies of the promo Vidramon who acts as a search to grab more and more Tamers. You've got that alongside the Ukomon, the other level 3, I think BT11 Vimmon, as well as the level 5 BT11 Arrow Vidramon, who's like the procrastinator of search, where at the last moment you can use his main effect to rest himself in the search top 3 for a Tamer. Speaking of the level 5s, the new BT22 Arrow Vidramon gives you the ability to bounce level 4s on evolve, thanks Makagalgamon for that, as well as the inheritance effect to, whenever he suspends, just become unsuspended. This is super useful defensively and offensively, where if you're just attacking, you can unsuspend and then attack again. And in the case that you have the new Vimmon and Vidramon in your sources, you can use their effect one more time in order to save him from being removed from the board. And then once you hit your level 6s, it's game time. And in a process I can best describe as, somehow, the BT11 Force Vimmon lets you keep attacking for as long as you have Arena Tamers to play from hand. Keep in mind, this is the old Arena Tamer, not the new one. The new Arena Tamer, on the other hand, gives you some ways to shore up some of your defenses from the past by giving you plus 3000 DP, and by bouncing her back to hand, you can give your Digimon jamming for the turn. Not to mention that she is a 3 memory setter every single turn, so it's actually worth getting her down before you make your big combo play. The deck also includes 2 copies of the new Force Vimmon Ace, who acts as a offensive and defensive powerhouse, giving you some defensive plays with the Ace, and the ability to bounce Digimon back to the bottom of the deck, or the ability to play down Tamers and unsuspend offensively if you just play them on your turn. And if that wasn't enough, you've also got the Force Vimmon X antibody and the Omnimon X antibodies, ways to keep extending attacks even if the memory's tipped over past your turn. And so if you're like me and you have a soft spot in your heart for just JoJo style punching somebody until you achieve victory, then definitely give Force Vimmon a shot. And with that, we're going to wrap up the first week of the BT22 Cyber Eden meta report over here in Asia. I personally had a ton of fun really messing around and mixing and matching some of the CS cards. That CS deck is honestly so fun. If you have nothing else you want to like build from this set, definitely give that a shot. Outside of that, I'm really excited to see how the Omnimon decks perform against things like Sakuyamon, Royal Knights, and Guillemon whatever. Between the Omnimon Alter S from EX9, the Guru Loop stuff that Unger Jackie won with at Singapore last week, and some of the other cooler things that people are experimenting with, I'm really excited to see how that shapes up. Anyways, folks, I'm going to get out of here. Before you get out of here, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.